Hi, I'm Ashton, and I need to cut my bangs, but that's not what I'm here to talk about today. Today I want to talk about something that I am super late on. I am behind the ball on this one. If you've been watching my videos recently, then you knew this one was coming, but if not, then hello, nice to meet you. I'm Ashton. I use he, they pronouns. And today I wanted to talk about what it has been like being off of testosterone for 6 months after being on it for over 7 years. I believe at the end of it, it was about 7 years and 8 months, so almost 8 years, but seven is a nice round number, so I'm just gonna say 7 years colloquially. Full disclosure, I did not realize that my 6 months off testosterone milestone had passed because I put the date in wrong on my phone. And then I looked at my own videos and I was like, it's been 6 months since I posted my Why I Want to Go Off T video. How could that be the case? And so I looked at the dates and I looked at it when I went to my doctor and I was like, oh, I was under the impression that I stopped tea in early February, but it was actually last year in late November. So it has been well over 6 months. This video is overdue, but that means that I have lots to talk about and lots of thoughts and lots of things to say to you. So maybe that'll be a good thing. So I made a video over 6 months ago about why I wanted to go off of tea. It's pretty easily findable. I'll also have it linked down below in case you want to go watch it. It is not required viewing for this video by any means if you don't care why I stopped tea. But to refresh your memory and give a little bit of context for anyone that doesn't want to go back, I stopped taking testosterone after 7 years of hormone replacement therapy because I had gotten all of the permanent changes from testosterone that I was looking for. My voice is deeper, I have facial and body hair that I would not otherwise have, and I have bottom growth, and none of those things are going to revert back, nor do I want them to. A couple of years ago, I had a laparoscopic hysterectomy, which I've made more videos on if you want further details, but essentially, my uterus is gone, but I still have my ovaries and my cervix. Since I no longer have a uterus, I no longer have a uterine lining to shed, so even without testosterone, I cannot get the blood section of a period, which is the part that gave me a lot of dysphoria, so that's honestly one of the biggest reasons that I considered going off of tea. I also am just very forgetful about my medications in general, and a medication that is an injection that you have to take once a week was something that I was really good at forgetting. On top of that, when I was on testosterone, I started to feel like my hair on the top of my head especially was starting to thin just a little bit, and I didn't love that. I'm trying to hair max, I went on tea to get the body hair and the facial hair, but I want to keep my head hair. I'm hair maxing. So for all of those reasons, I decided to try going off of tea, and so far, honestly, I have been pretty happy with that decision. We'll talk about it more shortly, but I have a couple other things I want to touch on first. So many of the comments on my video about why I wanted to go off tea were really, really lovely and encouraging, so thank you all for that. There were so many lovely, respectful questions and discussions about gender and non-binariness that I just really, really enjoyed. The video did breach my usual containment zone a little bit, though, and I definitely ended up with some really condescending and transphobic and just straight up rude comments, like comments that were not transphobic, but just really rude, which I kind of find funny. But we're just gonna ignore that, and I'm gonna say thank you in advance for being nice to me. Of course, I again need to address what I feel is obvious but needs to be repeated. Regardless of how you define the term, I am not detransitioning. I have nothing against people that detransition. I think that gender affirming care should be available to everybody, and that includes transitioning, and it also includes detransitioning. I think detrans people are often very cool. It's just not me. I'm a non-binary person. Since I came out 10 years ago, I have been a non-binary person. So it should not be shocking that my transition too is not a completely traditional FTM transition. I use a lot of words for my gender because a lot of words resonate with me. I am a non-binary trans man, but I'm also genderqueer. I'm also a pansy. I'm also a fairy. I'm also a horse girl. Everyone interprets words in their own ways. Labels are just labels. You do not have to understand my gender to respect it. Does the sparkly lip gloss get that through your head? I also wanted to touch on why I'm talking about this in the first place. I feel like transition videos are such a cornerstone of the transgender internet, and that corner of the internet has always been like my corner of the internet, right? When I started using the internet, one of my first Google searches was like, can I become a boy, I watched every single X years on testosterone video back when I was considering physically transitioning, and I think those videos can still be a really helpful resource for people that are considering transitioning, so it's something that I want to make. It's something that I find enjoyable and valuable. I also think videos about non-binary and non-linear transitions are especially valuable because they are not as common. I don't think that's necessarily because it's less common to be a non-binary person or a non-binary person that transitions. I think part of it is definitely because it is harder to talk about being non-binary online. People are meaner about being non-binary than they are about being trans. I've seen so many people that are like really chill with linear transitions and just hate non-binary transitions and really think that transitioning in a non-linear way is going to get you killed. It's not true. It's possible. You don't have to transition in a binary way, and I'm here to tell you about that. But yeah, I don't want this video to be super duper long. I have plenty of other things to do with my afternoon, so let's get into it. My overall feeling, honestly, as a whole, is that not that much has changed, which is kind of what I wanted, so I'm not complaining. That's just how I feel. I feel like the same guy in the same body. However, there are 6 things that I wanted to discuss now that I'm over 6 months into it. We are going to be talking about my body. We're going to be getting a little personal. We are going to be using body part words. We're going to discuss my reproductive system. And if any of those things ick you out, this is your chance to leave. Mom, dad, brother, this is your chance to leave. This is me politely asking you to leave if you are uncomfortable with those things. Okay, so the 6 things I wanted to talk about. The first thing is the thing that has been the most noticeable, as well as probably the thing that you are the most curious about, which is hormone cycles. I'm going to reiterate this in case it was not clear, but I don't have a uterus, but I do have ovaries. Whenever I talk about this, it seems to confuse some people, but it is an option. You can get your uterus taken out and leave your ovaries. It's not uncommon for transmasculine people to have hysterectomies in this fashion. It is an option, especially if you're getting a hysterectomy primarily for gender reasons and not for endometriosis or uterine cancer or fibroids. Then leaving your ovaries in some cases, like mine, can be beneficial because it is your ovaries, not your uterus, that produces the majority of the hormones that come from your endocrine/reproductive system. If you did not know, the human body functions a lot better when it has hormones in it. This is why a lot of people take hormone replacement therapy. Even non-transgender people do this, right? We need hormones for bone density. We need hormones for mood regulation. We need hormones for hunger regulation and metabolism. Hormones do a lot of different jobs, not just ones to do with your secondary sex characteristics. So even if you don't want to be on hormones, you probably need some sort of hormone in your body. And there are so many hormones. There are like 50 plus hormones. In trans circles, we mostly talk about testosterone and the estrogens like estradiol, progesterone, etc. But there are a lot more hormones than that. So because I left my ovaries intact when I removed my uterus, it is helping me out in the long run because I can still produce estrogens in-house in my own body, right? So now that I am not taking testosterone and my internal body systems are taking over, I am getting hormone cycles again, which I have not had in over 7 years, which is kind of wild. But I'm not getting the bleeding part. That's the part that caused me the most dysphoria and the part that I wanted to take out my uterus to counteract. Thank you to my surgeon, truly did me a solid on that one, because being off of testosterone has been pretty easy because I am not bleeding. I really, really appreciate that, and I'm so glad that I don't have a uterus anymore. That said, I do not love having a hormonal cycle, but it's not the end of the world. Most of what I have noticed has been cramps, increased fatigue, and feeling a little bit more fragile emotionally around the middle of the month. I don't think it's super regular. I haven't tracked anything yet. I know that I could and maybe should, but I am a little bit wary of tracking my cycle, however you may call it, because I don't bleed, but I feel like it could make me a little dysphoric to track it even. I know a lot of the apps and programs that people use to track stuff are very like lady-centered, and I also know that a lot of them share your health data with people that I don't want my health data shared with. So anyway, if you know of a data-safe period tracking app that is not super femi-floral, let me know. Maybe I'll try it out. But I have definitely noticed cycling. Like, I don't know when I would be on my period because I don't bleed, but I definitely have different hormones during different parts of the month, and I can tell. But it's not something that has been explicitly negative. Mostly it's been neutral. I don't mind the cramps too much because honestly, they are not worse than my typical chronic pain. I'm like, oh, what's one more cramp, to be honest?
I also feel like it's worth noting here that I'm someone with a pretty high pain tolerance. As far as I can tell, I am good at ignoring pain. I'm good at putting it in the back of my mind, and maybe that is partly because of a lifetime of chronic pain and being disabled. Maybe it's because I'm autistic and I have trouble generally listening to what my body is trying to tell me. So your mileage may vary on period cramps, obviously, but I felt like that was worth mentioning. Because although my cramps are not like terrible, awful, they do exist and they do bother me a little bit. It's just like, I don't care. I don't care if I'm in pain, to be honest. Because if I do care, it would ruin my life. Period cramps are really not that much different than my day to day life.
The emotional fragility can be a little bit annoying, but I'm already someone that's pretty emotionally fragile at this point in my life. A lot's been happening to me recently that I don't want to talk about on the internet. And I'm not against that. I am learning to be better about managing my emotions. I'm doing okay. I'm not in like a dangerous place, and having fragile emotions does not necessarily mean I want to go back on testosterone. I just feel like at some points of the month, I'm a little bit more emotional, I'm a little bit more fragile because my hormones are changing, and that's fine. And it helps to know that that is why, for sure. Like sometimes I have days where I'm like, dang, I am really angry today, or I'm really sad. And I'm like, oh, it's the 15th. So it's about time for this to happen, right? So that's what I've been experiencing hormone cycle wise. If you have questions about that further, let me know, but that's like the gist of what I wanted to talk about re the cycle situation. And second, I wanted to talk about emotions. This is something that's really controversial, and I had a couple of discussions with commenters on my going off of testosterone video about this because of the way that I talked about it. I am talking about my personal experiences with my hormones. And I say this every single time I talk about anything medical, right? Nothing is universal. Everyone is going to have a different experience. And while I do think that videos like this can be helpful so that you can figure out where you might want to go or what your transition path might look like, it is really important for me to state that every single person is different. And just because I'm having these experiences after going off of T does not mean that you will. Not everybody has super intense emotional changes regarding their hormones. Not everybody has super intense physical changes regarding their hormones, right? I do feel like it's been physically easier for me to cry. We lost one of my favorite ponies at work a few months back, and I shed some tears over it, let me tell you what. Every few months, my partner has to go to some sort of work training, and he leaves me alone at our apartment for a week, and I cried about it when I went off testosterone. I started crying about it more than I was before because I'm a little bit codependent, and a lot of my autistic need for a routine is fulfilled by him. So yes, I cried about it, but honestly, crying for me is good. I like to get my emotions out. It makes me feel less like they are trapped inside my body. And when I was on T, I really, really struggled to cry. There were times where I was like, I wish I could cry right now, and I wasn't. And again, I have to be careful about how I talk about this because there are a lot of people out there that will tell you testosterone will not change your emotions. You are going to be emotionally the same person on or off of testosterone. And that's true to an extent. But for me, what I've experienced is that testosterone changes the way that my emotions come out. It's easier for me to cry than it was when I was on T, and that is not a universal fact. That is simply my personal experience. I do think there's something to be said as well for how gendered expectations and gendered ideas surrounding hormones can shape our responses to them, because it is certainly not out of the question that it's a huge placebo. But I don't think that's the case, and that has been my personal experience with emotions and testosterone and coming off of it. I haven't had any increased dysphoria either. Dysphoria isn't really something that I've struggled with much in the past, I would say 5 years. And I think that's largely because I'm very, very rarely misgendered. At work, I am pretty much always gendered correctly. As far as I can remember, I have not been misgendered at either of my jobs. I am not misgendered when I walk around in the world. I'm not misgendered in my home or in my social life.
Another little note from the editor here, I do get questioned about my gender by children. Children relatively frequently ask me if I'm a boy or a girl. And that does not cause me dysphoria. I actually get a little bit of euphoria from that. I enjoy talking to kids about gender. I like breaking down gender stereotypes for children. I like asking them, what do you think? Or why do you ask that question? Like, does it matter to you? Do you care if I'm a boy or a girl? Will that change the way that you treat me? So it's not entirely true that I don't get misgendered at work, because my gender does get questioned at work by little kids and occasionally out in the world. To me, when a kid questions my gender, that implies to me that I look like an androgen, which is what I want. That is my gender goal. So because like social aspects were the biggest aspect of dysphoria for me, transitioning physically and socially has pretty much completely solved that problem for me. And going off of HRT has not reintroduced any dysphoria, because for me, I know that being a boy has nothing to do with whatever hormones are going around my body. I am who I say I am, and the chemical composition of my bloodstream
Has nothing to do with that. Testosterone gave me the secondary sex characteristics that I wanted. It started giving me some that I didn't want, and I said, cool, I'm done. I'm good. I'm leaving. And that's what I did. And so far, it's been pretty great. Number 3, my skin. This is something that I was not anticipating changing as much as it has. For the first few years that I was on T, during the most puberty-like phase, I definitely had quite a bit of acne. Testosterone made my skin get oilier and stay oilier, and since I have gone off of it, my skin has gotten less oily and more dry. I've been moisturizing more since I went off of testosterone. And this is something that's neither here nor there for me. I don't really care about my skin all that much. I know it's like a big organ, and maybe I should care about it a little bit more, but I put on sunscreen, I moisturize, but I don't really care about the texture of it all that much. I felt pretty lucky that testosterone didn't give me a lot of acne. I got acne when I was like 16, 17, 18, right? Kind of when everybody else has it too, because of the timing of when I was on testosterone. So that was helpful for me. And going off of T and having slightly less acne prone skin has been kind of nice. It's something that is a benefit, I guess, that I didn't really think would be, because I didn't even think about my skin that much to begin with, Number 4, I wanted to talk about my hair, obviously, right? That's one of the reasons I went off of T, so I have to talk about it now. I'm going to talk about all of my hair in this category, so body hair, facial hair, and head hair. Once your body and facial hair have become terminal hairs, so like not peach fuzz anymore, but the kind that, you can actually see and grows continually, those hairs are not going to go away once you stop testosterone, which is good. That's what I wanted. I wanted to continue having facial hair, and I have. I do think it has potentially started to grow a little bit slower. I don't know if that's because I'm overanalyzing it or if it actually is. Who could say? Yeah, maybe obvious, but my facial hair has not left me, neither has any of my body hair. I have a little bit on my chest and kind of a heart shape. I have some on my tummy, and my legs are covered in it, which is awesome because before I was on T, I had 0 leg hair whatsoever. 0 body hair. So body hair, facial hair have not really changed whatsoever, other than maybe my facial hair is growing a little bit slower, but I don't know if it actually is, and there's no way for me to test that, really. What has changed is the hair on my head. I do think I've had less hair falling out since I stopped testosterone, which makes sense. That's why I stopped. Before I stopped, I was losing a lot, or not a lot, but like an intermediate amount of hair on top of my head. It was coming out in the shower. I was noticing that more of my hair was falling out, but now it's not. I'm losing what I would consider a more normal amount of hair when I shower. There is less hair coming out. So that's great. That's what I was expecting, and that is what I would like to continue to see. I've always had kind of a larger forehead. I don't think that like this recession here is going to come back necessarily, because that happened back, like way back when I started T, my hairline moved, and that's fine. That's expected. It's just the thinning that I didn't want to happen. So I'm glad to be avoiding that. Thing number 5 I wanted to talk about is strength and muscle. I do feel like I have been less able to work. And this is also connected to point number 6, which is EDS and disability, which we'll get to, but I wanted to focus on strength and muscle first. Now, I live in North Carolina. It is currently middle of the North Carolina summer, and let me tell you what, it is a hot one. I have always been a very heat intolerant person. It's why I try to work less in the summer, but you need rent in the summer too, so I'm working some, and it has been really, really rough for me. And I do feel like I've been less tolerant of the heat since going off of testosterone, and I don't know if that is a hormonal thing, or if it is a Ashton being autistic and sensitive thing, or if it's just a feeling more sensitive due to changes in general thing, because I feel like from what I have heard, mostly being on testosterone is what makes you get hotter. Due to my past as someone who has struggled with eating, I do not measure or track or weigh or even really look at my body super intensely, so I don't think I've really lost muscle, but it's possible that I have. But my legs look the same, pretty sure my arms look the same. I am doing the same work that I have done for the past 3 years and have not noticed any real changes other than the fact that the heat is making me miserable.
To be honest, I don't know if it's me that's changed. I think it may be the climate that has changed. I don't know if anyone else has ever talked about this, but I think it might be getting hotter.
I know it is easier to maintain muscle that you already have than it is to grow more muscle, or than it is to like lose muscle. I wasn't really looking to become less muscled. I wasn't really looking to become muscled in the first place when I started T. So it's not really something that bothers me. I try to maintain a healthy, positive neutrality about my body. You know, it carries me places. I can pick up a bale of hay. I can move a horse with my legs. So that's all I need. Finally, number 6, I wanted to talk about disability, EDS specifically. I have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. There is a very large overlap between people who are autistic and transgender and also have HEDS. So many of you will not be surprised to learn that I have HEDS. Many of you will not know what HEDS is, and that's okay, you don't have to. But for those that care about how hormones impact your disability, here I am to talk about that. My chronic pain has definitely gotten a little bit different since I stopped taking testosterone. I would not say it has gotten stronger or worse, but it has gotten more widespread. I am having chronic pain in places where I did not have chronic pain previously, and I would assume that is because of the hormones. So previously, when I was on testosterone, the main places that I would get chronic pain were like the coat hanger, back of the neck, shoulders area, my wrists, as well as my lower back and my knees. Now I still have all of those places, but my elbows are getting worse, my wrists are a little bit worse, my ankles and my toes are much worse than they were. And that has all changed since going off hormones, so I would assume that changing hormones made me hurt worse in more places. So that's been fun and exciting. It has not been as terrible as I expected it might be. I feel like it could still change, it could still get worse, maybe it'll get better, maybe I'll adjust a little bit. If you are someone with chronic pain, I am sure you will understand this, but it is so hard to like quantify it or really place it in your body sometimes when you just feel it like pretty much every day something hurts, and some days it's something different and some days it's 5 different things. It's really hard to definitively say like going off of testosterone has made this change, because it is different every day and it is different every season, and part of that is just my environment and what I'm doing, and part of that is changes in my body. And as I said before, it is inconvenient and a little bit frustrating, honestly, to kind of feel like I'm trading some of my gender presentation for some of my pain. Like, it feels like to present my gender, my secondary sex characteristics the way that I would like to, I have to choose to be in a little bit more pain. It's like, oh, you want to be transandrogynous? Oh, you want to be pre-little androgen? You better be suffering for it.
So I talked a lot about the things that have changed, right? But I'm realizing that I maybe should also mention body fat redistribution, because it's something that a lot of people have commented about and something that has not happened yet, from my perspective at least. And I think it is because it is more of a long-term thing, and it also, from my knowledge, tends to happen faster if you are gaining and losing weight. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm someone who tries really, really hard to foster a like neutrally loving relationship with my body, like neutral positive. So I try not to look too hard or scrutinize myself too much. I have a twinky little waist, I have wider hips, I have a really, really muscular butt and thighs and legs in general. So my figure is not the most masculine thing about me, and I'm not super concerned about it changing because I honestly don't care that much about it. I don't think it is something that other people look at as much as people think they do. Or maybe I'm just not someone who really looks at people's bodies in a way of like, do you have a masculine butt or a feminine butt? So while the shape of my body in terms of body fat may change longer term, it's not something that I am very attentive to, nor is it something that I care that much about, because I like my body for what it does for me, not for the shape that it gives me.
But that's pretty much everything. That is pretty much everything that I have noticed after living over 6 months without testosterone, after being on it for about 7.5-ish years. Those are all the things that I've been experiencing lately that I wanted to share with you. it's kind of been going exactly how I hoped it would. It has not been that intense. It has not been that different. I am so, so grateful that I've had my uterus removed, and I really enjoy not having to take a shot and just being able to produce my own hormones, even if they're not like the hormones that I would ideally want. I would love to have some sort of like third gender fucky bucky hormones that are not testosterone or estrogen and just like something alien and different. Someone in the comments of my last video was like, what about testosterone 2? And I was like, ooh, I would take testosterone 2, maybe testosterone 2.5. I would love that. Sorry if this was underwhelming or you were like hoping that there would be some sort of dramatic update of like, oh, I have to go back on testosterone, my body's falling apart. But no, my body is falling apart, but only to the extent that it always has been falling apart. Really not too much has changed. But I hope this was helpful to you regardless. I hope that maybe it opened up some new transition possibilities for your future. Maybe you learned a little bit about me. Maybe you learned a little bit about hormones. I don't know. If you have questions about my experience stopping tea after 7 years, feel free to leave them in the comments. I love to chat about this sort of thing. Goodbye, comrades. I hope that you are exercising your bodily autonomy and not infringing upon anybody else's. And I will talk to you later. Maybe wear a mask.